Well, shooters and reloaders out there, Fortune Cookie 45 LLC coming to the hot lead zone. And look at all these nice 44 Magnum full loadings ready to shoot. Lovely, aren't they? And they're reloads. Well, Karl Adkins just got a hold of one of these Lee auto drum powder measures, and he's got an idea about what to do to adjust the neck expanding mouth flaring die for the use of this measure, but he'd like to get a video that would be more in detail about this. So I'd like to do him one better, and that is to talk about how to adjust all the dies for our reloading, and just talk about that, the proper setup of the dies in our presses. Now, for ease of use, you should arrange your dies in your die box in the following order. The number 1 die is your resizing decapping die. The number 2 die is your neck expander mouth flaring die. Your number 3 die is your bullet seeder and crimper die if you have a 3 die set. If you have a 4 die set, they'll include a separate crimping die. So there you go, the 4 dies. Here's your decapping resizing die. You can tell because it's got a decapping pin sticking out there. Only die that has that. And this die resizes with a carbide ring that's set inside the steel die body. Notice that it's set down inside there so that the steel die body protects the carbide ring. If your carbide ring is even to the shell body or the die body, the problem with that is something hitting that could crack carbide inside. Really simple. Just crank the ram all the way to the top and then screw in the die until it hits the shell holder. Then tighten the lock ring. The die is adjusted. Go ahead and run all of your cases through there and it'll decap and resize every case. Before we go on, let's talk about die lock rings. A lot of reloaders don't appreciate the Lee die lock rings because they don't lock. The way they work is there's a rubber gasket that when you tighten it down holds it in position during the use. But once we take the die out of the press, there's always a chance that you can lose the setting, and that's the problem. Well, when they're being used, they're not a problem. At any rate, the shooters that don't appreciate the Lee die lock rings will go to rings from other manufacturers, such as this one's a Forester. It's made out of aluminum and it has a cross lock that tightens the die lock ring onto the die body, and that is a very firm adjustment. Here's a Herder's. Here is a Lyman, a couple of Lymans, their latest one and the older one. Here's a Hornady, and then here are RCBS rings. Some of these have a through bolt that goes through with a little lead washer bearing on the threads to lock it. Some don't like that feature. The ones that have a cross lock, like the Hornady, the Lyman here, the Forester, some really like that feature. Others like the fact that these are steel, but they don't like the aluminum ones, such as Forester or RCBS aluminum rings. These are all your choice. They all work. Even the Lee works well. But if you want to lock it in place, these are the ones to use. If you have more than one press, you don't have any problem with the Lee, really. Extra die lock rings from all the companies can be purchased separately. I like to keep a good assortment of them on my bench. Now, if you do use Lee dies, make sure you don't lose the little rubber gasket, because they all have those in there. So that if one comes out, you want to make sure you hang on to it. And in fact, it's good to have a spare or two. Okay, the next die is your neck expander powder through die. And that one's easy to tell because it has this aluminum plug on the end of it right here. And this is the one that Karl Adkins is asking about. What's the best way to adjust this die? Let's go into that. Now, the proper adjustment of this die is done with the plug in place, but if you're going to use the Lee auto drum powder measure, you adjust it the same way, But first, you take off the plug and install your powder measure. Now you tighten that down to compress the rubber gasket. And then you make sure that your riser is also tight by tightening this lock ring up here on top. Now you've got the die and the powder measure installed together, ready to put into the press to adjust it for proper mouth flaring. Now in some places, like on the factory video, they'll recommend that you raise the ram and then lower the die into the press far enough to contact the shell holder. Like that. And then back it off 3/4 turn like this. Then tighten down the die lock ring. 2 hands needed for that. Now if you do that, this is the adjustment you'll get. But when you run a case in there, this is what will happen. It will over flare and crush the mouth of your case, ruining a perfectly good 44 Magnum case. Not recommended. So let's back off that die another 2 or 3 full turns, and then let's run a case in there and do it by trial and error. There's the case going into the die, and you see you feel the neck expansion, but you don't feel any mouth flare, and that's okay. Then lower the die again, another half turn. Still no mouth flare. Another half turn. There. Now we're getting a little mouth flaring. Maybe even a little too much. We'll back it off. There. Presses that full stroke, and we're getting some mouth flare. Let's increase that a little bit. There it is. Now let's check that mouth flare. There you see the bullet going into the started flared mouth. That's all you need. We lock down that die lock ring, and that's easy because you can tell the orientation with this little pointer and the little flag there. Make sure it's in the same place and tighten this little ring down. Now you're all ready to go ahead and mouth flare and neck expand all your cases and dump the powder charge of your choice, all at the same time. So we'll double check that. Case goes in, there's the action of the powder measure, and then we can check again the bullet seating, or rather the bullet mouth flare. There it is, perfect. Now the next die is your bullet seating die. It has a tapered bottom, and it kind of looks like the crimping die, but it's not. Go ahead and install that one. So put your bullet seating die in. Make sure that you're not in far enough so that there's no chance that the crimp will engage. And then back off the seating stem until you start seeing threads here on the seating stem. Put a case in, and when you run that in, you should not feel any crimp. So that if you put a bullet in there, you still have the mouth flare. Then simply run your bullet and case into the die like that, and you start feeling the bullet start to be seated. Then lower your seating stem until your crimping groove lines up with the case mouth, and a little bit. And there you have it. right at the top of the crimping groove. Now you can go ahead and seat all your bullets. Then we'll take our fine factory crimp die. That's the Lee factory crimp die that's got a carbide ring right here. Go ahead and install that into the press, and it's very simple. Anytime you have a carbide ring, just put the die in far enough to touch the shell holder, like that, and then tighten the adjustment. Back off the crimping stem so there's no chance that you're getting any crimp. And then put your case in that has the seated bullet, and there is a little bit of adjustment for the carbide ring, getting rid of bulges, and there you see there's no crimping applied. So go ahead and crank down the crimping stem until it contacts the case mouth, like so. Then back the case out, add about a half turn, and start applying crimp. Now that's not enough, so give it a little more. That's not bad. Then go ahead and crimp all your rounds. So Karl Adkins, before you know it, you got 50 rounds of full magnums ready for the range or field. Good reloading to you and everybody else out there. Bye for now.